Good morning and welcome to your Partner in Success Radio. I am your host, Denise Griffitts, and this podcast has been bringing you conversations with authors, entrepreneurs, mentors, and business leaders for almost 18 years now. In fact, we'll be 18 in January, which is just, 4 minutes away? This year is going so fast. And I am honored to be ranked in the top 1.5% of podcasts worldwide. Today, our topic to me is a very important one, and it's What's Right with America? Conversations on freedom, values, and civic empowerment with my guest, Larry Aldrich. And today's episode of Your Partner in Success Radio is sponsored by Ben Gay III. Ben is a legendary sales trainer, author, and the creator of the Closer series. In my opinion, a must-have resource for anyone serious about mastering the art of selling or even marketing. And he is my mentor. I'm grateful for his support and for the powerful principles he continues to share with entrepreneurs and sales professionals around the world. Ben is also my co-host each Wednesday on the Closers Inner Circle podcast. Be sure to check out his books and his training at BFG and the number 3, BFG3.com, and tell him I sent you. Now back to my guest. My guest today, Larry Aldrich, JD, is a retired attorney and business executive with a distinguished career in media, healthcare, and venture capital. He served as senior trial counsel at the U.S. Department of Justice, senior legal counsel at Gannett, I think I pronounced that right, and president of Tucson Newspapers. And Larry also founded a Southwest venture capital firm and led healthcare technology companies. Here's what I really want to talk about. He is the co-author of What's Right with America and how we can keep it that way. He is a passionate advocate for American values, freedom, and civic empowerment, sharing his insights through writing, podcast, and public speaking. Good morning, Larry. It's good to have you back on the show.
Good morning, Denise. It's wonderful to be back, and congratulations on your anniversary. 18 years. You were at the early phases of this communication system, so well done.
I got tricked into it, but yes, I did. I had a friend that called me and she said, Denise, I'd love to interview. And I had never heard of a podcast. And I said, okay. She said, well, can we record it right now? And I figured she might just go ahead and, transcribe it and send it to a magazine or something. And when she sent me that link, I just went, oh my God, because who likes to hear their own voice? I mean, seriously. So but she explained what it was, and I was a podcaster the next day.
Good for you. Congratulations again.
Thank you. Listen, I want you to know that your book, What's Right with America, sits on my desk as one of my most important reads, and I reference it frequently on LinkedIn and on, social media. It really is one of my most important reads because it offers essential wisdom on America's enduring strengths and how to preserve them. So before we get started, tell us a bit about you and your story.
Well, you had a very nice introduction, so that I really appreciate, and I won't belabor it. But I think a lot of what we wrote in the book, and my co-author is a former mayor of Phoenix, and an entrepreneur himself. And we really were just, and I'll admit my status, two old white guys. I'm older than he is, who have been very fortunate. We both were raised. I was raised in a middle class family. My co-author was raised in a lower class family. Really struggled with poverty times when he was younger. And we looked back and said, where were we just two white guys, and that's our advantage. And we really focused on the fact that no, America is our advantage, and we are all so fortunate to live in America. We have really built collectively a country, and we've built it on the backs of the founders of America who basically focused on the rights of individuals, the power of individuals to make a difference, to basically decide what they individually would like to do, who they marry, what they worship, where they go, how they travel, what job they want to have, what education they might get to get a better job. And that power of the individual was really so much heightened by our founders who said that is what will make America a great country. And we're coming up on the 250-year anniversary next year, and we all are just fortunate to live in America.
Listen, I agree with you, and I have all of my life been very proud to be an American. That has never changed, and I don't watch the news because as far as I'm concerned, it's propaganda, nothing more or less, and I'm not going to allow some outside voice or voices tell me what I should be proud of. Not gonna happen.
Yep. Well, I'm glad you weren't one of our subscribers in Tucson because we actually back in the 90s had a fairly large operation, but it's much less today. There's much more. I'll call it bias in the collective media. I'd like to say when people mention media, they really are talking about broadcast media. They're not
Mhm.
talking most part about print media, podcast media, a little bit social media, but it really is, network and other kinds of television, the visual media, the moving visual media. And they get very upset with the media. And it's like, I hate the media. And then you kind of say, what? And it's MSNBC or it's Fox or it's CNN. And well, how about your local newspaper? Oh, they're fine. And that typically has been the answer but people kind of put media in a collective bucket. And the challenge for that is here's my plug for the print media. It's those print journalists, not talking the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, local communities that have either a weekly or a daily newspaper. And those individuals who report, they go down to the city council. They write on who's moving in and moving out of the community. They write about high school sports. They write about what your grandkids are doing and getting an award for. And as we have collectively over the last, especially 20 years, moved much more towards social media, a lot of those print media locations have really struggled, and it's very rare to find across America, competition in print. But if those individual entities go away, we are then to some degree, uh, we don't have a window into what our elected officials are doing with our taxpayer money. We don't have time to sit down at a city council meeting for 6, 7 hours in the afternoon or at night till 1 a.m. We don't have any time to go and attend a school board meeting, and I've attended a bunch of them over my years, and they really get pretty ugly. And so we don't really have the time, nor do we have the interest. Yet somebody else does. And as the print media gets smaller and smaller, I think we as Americans, it kind of hurts our ability to be informed citizens, to elect the right people, to focus on the right policies. So, that's my 30, 45-second plug for, people should at least pick up their weekly newspaper. If it's paid, subscribe to it. It's not that expensive. And understand they're an extension of you and me into those various places where we needed more information.
That makes sense, and I wanted to ask you because you have a Substack. What and I'm seeing more and more people going from, maybe print media or even YouTube to get their message out with Substack. How is that working for you? Are you getting more eyeballs on what you have to share?
No, it's actually, you're right that Substack has become the place for people when they leave whatever,
Right.
they're a journalist and now they don't want to work for their local paper or the Washington Post or MSNBC and they go to Substack. It's like everything in life, Denise. I mean, there's just a teeny small percentage. There's a teeny small percentage of podcasters like you that are in that top 1.5, 2%. And there's literally millions that are below that, and it's always tough to get traction. And part of it, I think, what that does, people are looking for interest and following and reading, and so people get kind of extreme in what they put out there with the hope that maybe something outrageous will catch fire on the internet, and all of a sudden they become visual and visible, which unfortunately is a poor driver. You'd like to think people are driven for the most part by putting on what they believe, their truth, their facts, and their opinions, and they disclose that. why they believe what they believe, why they're saying what they're saying, and this world of eyeballs and
Clicks. Everything's about getting a click.
yeah, it's created, unfortunately, very strong negative incentives. And so what do we get? We get the extremism. And can you believe what MSNBC said today about President Trump? Or, go down the other side. And so it's difficult. So, I mean, I think, thank you. I saw that you were my newest subscriber. I think I
I
have
did
18.
this morning. Yeah.
I've got 18 or 19, and maybe I get 25 who read. So I try not to bother my loyal few who know pretty much what I'm going to say. But it's a great product. The chat and Substack. I mean, I would be honest by saying I haven't spent enough time to figure out the legitimate marketing and promos that you do and how you get visibility by not being outrageous, but just by placement and visuals and so forth. And I think if I spend a little more time, maybe I could go from 25 to 50. But it's a great place. It's free, and you can opine. I've been on Medium, didn't get a lot of traction there, but we'll see. We'll see if I've got a site for myself and I've got a site for the book on there, and we'll talk a little bit about my co-author's new political party, and so we're creating a new site about his political party on Substack. So it's a great place to be, and then you cross promote on your various other sites, your Twitter or Blue Sky or LinkedIn, and it has some really nice tools to be able to do that very efficiently.
One thing I do know, if you're going to be on social media, and we do need to be on social media with care and consideration, that you need to be very consistent. You need to show up every day somewhere, but every single day. And I think that's what a lot of people just miss. Well, I'm not, I'm on LinkedIn, but I'm not doing great over there. Well, how often are you there? Oh, about once or twice a week. Okay, try more. And yeah, and talk with other people, network with other people, comment, show up. You can't just go, well, they'll find me. No, they won't.
It won't. You're right. You're
No.
right. So you have to work like everything and everything important in life. If you really want to make some of those things happen, you have to work it. That's the right comment.
And consistency is critical. So well, hang on a second. I'm losing track of what I want to ask you. You kind of, talked a little bit about what inspired you and Paul Johnson to write the book. And I love this book. I'm telling you, it lives on my desk. I have bookcases all over this office. I've got 3 of them, and I've got a huge basket of overflow because I need another bookcase, but that would require another wall. That's not going to happen. But there are 1 or 2 books that live on the desk. I don't move them. I don't, put them even in eye level on the bookcases. I want it handy, and yours is one of those books.
We are honored, Denise. Thank you. And we try to just get our message out, which is we're in a world where America stinks and only President Trump can fix it, or America is terrible and President Trump is causing it. And we've got this contention, and back to the media. It's really the media focuses on those contentions. And as we point out in the book, 70 to 80% of Americans don't feel that way. We're not out on the polls. We're not out on the
No.
extremes. We're not out in the outrage. We are kind of going through life. We're, raising our kids or seeing our grandkids or taking the dog for a walk or taking the cat on your lap and, trying to live life, trying to be a good, moral, productive, honest person, be a good friend. I had a chance to get on the pickleball courts this morning. I'm a big pickleball player, and, life is pretty good in America to be able to do that. So we just don't get into this moment of spending time in front of the television. The 70 to 80%, because we're living our lives. And the analogy I put out there is I know when I see my doctor's impression is like, we're a patient 80% of the time. Doc, hey, Doc, I'm a patient 1% of the time. And we should be a informed person, but we should be engaged in the intense work 1 or 2% of the time. We are a voter 1 to 2% of the time. The rest of the time, we want to be paying attention to the people we voted for, as I said earlier, to make sure they're actually doing what we expect them to do and not stealing or inappropriately using our taxpayer money. But we have other ways to do that. We want to live lives. We want to work hard. We want to practice whatever religion we practice. We want to enjoy our community and make it better. And it's a lot. A lot of what America is so much of that stuff we don't have to worry about what's underneath the ability to do that. For example, we drive on the road. We don't have to really worry about, is it appropriate for somebody else to drive on the other side of the road? We crossed that roadway or that bridge, you know, centuries ago by making sure we had the right collective understanding of what it requires for us to properly engage with the public, i.e., in that case, driving on the road. And that's in so many other countries in the world. Some of those basics, you wake up and you have no idea what it's going to take to go from A to B because they are complete chaos. Their governments don't work. You may have to bribe a policeman to make sure you get from A to B and then to C. And we take those things for granted. I'm a lawyer. The rule of law in America is fundamental. The Constitution is a statement of how we govern ourselves at the federal level, and the Constitution's of the various states, how we govern ourselves at the local level, and then various other, we get down to counties and cities, and that's all in place. It's all, our people before us created that structure, and we as Americans basically have to decide to accept that structure or appropriately change it through the process to do that. And that's why what's so difficult on, especially on national politics this day. It shouldn't matter as much as at least the media makes it matter. It doesn't matter to the average American. They are trying to run their life. They don't want to be hassled and hustled and stressed. They just want to do the best they can every day, raising their family and being a good citizen.
And that's the way I have always seen America. We get up, we do our best, we go about our business, we help when we can, we say no when we should. It shouldn't be a big deal. It really should not be a big deal.
Yep, and that's the piece I think is part of the theme that runs through the book. We don't have to make it a big deal because we've across these various bridges centuries ago, certainly decades ago. And those foundational facts of America do not exist in that many countries across the world, and we have a tendency to forget it.
I think the only other country that might have something similar is England with the Magna Carta.
Yeah, I think that they probably started it earlier, and I think our founders accelerated it.
Right.
Where England is, and others have looked to America and adopted it. But you'll see a number of democracies, Peru fairly recently, that don't have that longevity. I mean, one of the things we have in America is we've road tested our democracy, and we've gone through some super tough times, especially the main Civil War. And we came out on the other side. We might not have, but we did. We stressed our democracy and then strengthened ourselves. And other countries, haven't yet had those stresses. So when things get tough, they stress their governmental system, their democracy, and sometimes it breaks. And we're lucky that it didn't break in America. It hasn't broken in the Great Depression and you get down the list of Vietnam War, and there are a lot of things that have stressed our democracy that we've come out the other side definitely stronger and better. And those who are very worried about where we stand today, they just need to roll up their sleeves, get to work, go back, you do what they're doing, and focus on how great it is to be an American and continue to defend their country and their democracy.
I love what you just said about road tested. I wrote that down. That makes so much sense. It's so simple. And we did. We will continue to road test everything.
And that's why some of your listeners, have seen the Ken Burns series on PBS about the American Revolution. And, you look at that, that was a hugely violent time. We have a little bit of a sanitized version of the American Revolution. They decided to go revolts, and yeah, we had a little war. No, we had a bloodthirsty, almost like the Civil War, brother against brother, for almost 10 years. I mean, it was and many people died horrifically, and they built the democracy that we rely on today. So it's good to have that retrospect to go back and go, oh yeah, that was not that easy. They didn't, and it wasn't clear that we would win uh, that Revolutionary War. Like it wasn't clear at times in the Civil War that the Union would hang together. It wasn't clear in World War II whether the world wouldn't be taken over by Nazi Germany and some of the other countries. And yet we came out and we were stronger.
They sure tried, didn't they?
They sure did. Yep.
Mm-mm. Listen, Larry, you highlight freedom and prosperity as core American strengths, and I believe that down to my core. What specific examples from your career illustrate these in action?
Good question. The book talks the beginning of the book talks about basically the a defining moment in my life and Paul's life, which was the moon landing, 1969, and
I
we
remember
had.
we talked about that when you came on my show on July 4th, and thank you for that.
Oh yeah, it was just an honor, and I was coaching Little League baseball and listening on the AM radio to that moon landing, and my co-author was racing home. He's a little younger than I, and 11 or 12, and we welcome down to the television to watch that landing, and we highlight the fact that there were many people that thought it wasn't going to work. There were many people that thought that those astronauts were going to die on the moon, and they had a whole process to notify their widows and commend their bodies to the moon, just like they did for sailors who died at sea. I mean, that was kind of the belief. 1969, our technology was still pretty early, and yet again we were successful. I'm an engineer by schooling, so I'm proud of the engineers that had that moment to celebrate. But at the time, I was kind of like, I think I'm going to go to engineering and build spaceships. That was my plan. And a year later, I went to Georgia Tech and ended up becoming a civil engineer, but I ended up going to law school. So that part, to me, is a lot of what about America is our ability to change and get the education we might need. So, I just one day decided, oh, engineering sounds great, but maybe I want to be a lawyer. So I had to change my focus and find a law school that would let me in and graduate, and that has been most of my career. So those pieces really are. It's just so much easier in America than almost anywhere else to make that change. It is simply easier in America for somebody who was raised in poverty through especially access to education and working hard and getting educated to actually lift themselves and their family up to higher levels of economic benefits. And there's so many countries where they have these kind of class systems that stratify people, and they just don't have any ability to move from one class or one level to another. That's not true in America.
It's not.
Yeah,
And one thing that I learned very early on, because I'm a reader, I will read the back of a cereal box, seriously. And I don't eat cereal, but if that's the only thing that's in front of me, I'll read it. But if you have a library card or you have access to a library, you can educate yourself. So there's
that's
no
right.
excuse for not educating yourself.
Well, and in today's world, I mean, we have the library in our palm of our hand on our phone.
Right. And YouTube and yeah, I mean, you can go anywhere. Now, I will stress this, and I talk about this all the time. Dig into your critical thinking. Don't believe everything you read or everything you see, but critical thinking is a skill that if you don't have it, you need to develop it.
Absolutely. And, we have to certainly recognize there is a part of a number of Americans that just don't have the capability, just don't have. They're unfortunate. They've been unfortunate either in terms of their overall intellect. I hate using that word, but that's kind of what it
No, it's
is.
true. IQ and EQ.
Yeah, and or behavioral health issues, mental health issues. I mean, there's a number of people that it's easy to say, "Oh, just get educated and get better," but some people really deal with issues. Some people deal with self-imposed issues like substance abuse, often caused by their underlying, behavioral health issues. And so we have to recognize that in America, that everybody can step out of wherever they started and get stronger. But the vast majority can. Of course, they need access. They need to be able to, if they were raised in a impoverished part of Greater Phoenix, they got to expect that their public school system is
Mm.
going moving them up. One of the other great things of America is our public school system. I mean, Thomas Jefferson talked about the importance of public education, and we can argue about whether our education is good, bad, or indifferent, but the access to free public education through high school, and for many people, the access to fairly free education in college at the greatest universities in the world is a breathtaking approach to how you get better, stronger, and more effective, and build a life that matters.
I agree. Listen, I hated school. I really did. I don't like to be told what to do. I fight with my nav system. She's not the boss of me. I really did not enjoy school, and I would deliberately, I shouldn't say this out loud, but I would deliberately get in trouble so I could go to the room where they put all the bad kids so I could read. I didn't wanna
Well,
be in a room where I had to listen to 30 other voices chattering or talking, and we're all being taught the same thing. I was already way above that because I was reading at 3.
and
So
that's I think
I hated schooling, but I need to go back and say I'm still grateful it was available to me.
well, and I think the reading is so important, and it's just I think the science is pretty clear. Kids that are not reading at grade level by the third grade are in trouble for the rest of their lives.
Absolutely.
It's important, and and there's the data is mixed as to parental reading is pretty important, but it's not a real crisis. Kids can catch up, from kindergarten, first grade, if they just were unfortunate to be in a family that either their parents weren't present, or had their own issues, or didn't have time because of how hard they were working. We can catch those kids up. But when we don't catch them up, and when public education fails to get those kids to reading at third grade, and we can kind of social promote them to higher grades, we're fating them for a life that's not going to be a great life. And we didn't tackle in any meaningful way education in our book, just because it's such a big issue and would require obviously many books about that. But I'm a strong believer that just what you did. I mean, you've been successful, Denise, in major part because you were a reader. You learned so much simply by reading. And I've said, I think we should take our public education system. You want to teach science? Teach kids to read. You want to teach kids math? Teach kids to read. You want to teach kids reading? Teach kids to read. And so reading is the foundational issue. And I'd love to see universities spend more time on reading, reading coaches, tutoring. They'll pick up math via reading, and then they'll take that off and decide to do their fractions or their calculus at the higher level. And they can do that. But reading is the foundation for everything you learn. And if you're not, I don't read. And I feel sorry for them. That's probably few people I feel really sorry for. It's people that choose not to read. Again, if somebody has a disability, they have an inability or difficulty reading, that's a different issue. But if you have the ability to read and you'd really rather sit in front of the television, I just feel sorry for you, because the doorways to learning so much more than you'll ever learn by watching that television, they're closed if you're not a reader.
And you hear stories about college, kids in college, how they got in there, I don't know, but they can't read. They simply do not know how to read. It's not that they won't, it's they can't.
And I've had many I mean, when I was in the newspaper business, in Tucson, Arizona, you just kind of get involved in the community. So I was involved in the K through 12 community and attending school board meetings and helping them help the schools figure out what they needed to do. And so I would talk to various superintendents about reading even back then and social promotion. I mean, and it would
Yeah,
be
you
social
see that.
promotion, the motion of advancing kids up because, their peers are advancing. It's horrible. And I understand, and those teachers and superintendents say, well, we need more money. You got a really lot of money. You're just not using it effectively. But if you take a kid and move them to fourth grade and they can't read, or fourth to fifth, I mean, shame on the education system. Shame on us not holding the education system more accountable. I mean, sorry if a kid can't read at third grade, don't promote him to fourth grade. You may not promote him to fourth grade or fifth grade or sixth grade, but you have to focus on that individual, and that might require money going into specialized tutoring. Many
Mentoring, just find somebody in the classroom who can help you.
no,
I
and
mean, people
and
do want to help you. I don't know why people say, "Oh, well, nobody will help me." Yeah, they will. Ask. Ask for help.
And I have grandkids, and some of those grandkids, as they're moving up through high school, get to tutor younger people, and they're so delighted to have somebody 4, 5, 6 grades younger than they are look up to them. And so, it doesn't have to be an adult.
No.
You know, have those kids that have been somewhat successful or more than somewhat successful, and focus their energies on helping younger kids read. And you know, some people say reading is a dying art. Well, I mean, you can't be. I mean, you can listen to your podcast, but for the most part, you need to follow up, and you're going to have to read somewhere. You may read on your phone, you might not read in a hard copy book, but at some point, you're going to need to read more than just listening or watching. And then if you struggle with that, you're not going to try. So your knowledge, your information, your ability to use that information in a meaningful way is going to be less than somebody else who's actually done a little deeper dive on their own. And in the world of AI we're in, the deeper dives are so accessible.
They really are. There's really, in my opinion, this is just my opinion because I am a reader. I hate sleeping. I don't sleep well. And I'm telling you this for a reason because I've never been much for sleeping. I will sleep a couple of hours and I wake up and I might go make a gumbo. I might vacuum. I don't know what I'm gonna do. And eventually I'll fall back asleep for, maybe 3 hours. So if I can get 4 to 5 hours at night, and not necessarily in a row, I'm good. That's just the way my body works. I'm not an insomniac. I don't get exhausted. That's just the way I work. But I finally realized that I really don't like sleeping because it cuts into my reading time.
Yeah, that's and I'm at the older end of life the last 10 yards, and yeah, sleep is always a challenge for me. So I do the same. I read when I can, as much as I can, and hopefully read till I'm tired, and then hopefully go to bed and get a few hours of sleep. So
I've always read myself to sleep, always. And then I wake up and I go, "Ooh, what was I missing?" I go back to whatever it was that I was reading. But to me, that the sheer joy in my life is reading. And people say, "Oh, you must be really boring." Nope, I'm not. Just
yeah, yeah,
deal with it. Yeah. So let's talk about, and we just talked about mentoring a little bit. If you could mentor young leaders entering into media or tech, what piece of advice would you give them to preserve what's right with America? We've talked a bit about it, but can you expand on that?
yeah. It's a good question. I think I think it starts with where we just finished. I think you've got to be informed, and it's really hard to be informed when you're outsourcing that information to a third party who basically you're just taking that word. You don't have multiple people you listen to, watch on television, or read. So I think it's very important for everyone to be a skeptical consumer of information. somebody says something, I wonder how I could know that, or I wonder how I can know whether that's in fact true, because so much sounds like fact, but it actually is opinion. And
Propaganda. Let's call it what it is. It's propaganda.
check it out. I mean, I think we see less and less these days. At least I do, from friends of mine who would send me something they found on the internet. Can you believe? And then you kind of, I immediately would go to these various websites that will tell you whether that's true or not, and you find out 90%, 95% of the time it's not true, and it's
But it's
embarrassing.
well written. You got to give
Yeah,
them that.
well written, and it sounds like it's got. And there's of course, in the world of artificial intelligence, the ability to put fake news up there, have President Trump say things that are just not what he would say, and say, yeah, look, it was right on the internet, or this is what this Democrat was saying, it was right on the internet, and so the need for our citizenry to be more skeptical of what they see, read, and hear is getting more and more. Yet we have more and more important. We have the tools to help us do that. And I'm a big believer in artificial intelligence and what it brings to us. So I think the message, the mentoring, I'd say, is it's kind of what I said a little bit earlier. It's really important that our sources of information, one, be as accurate as they possibly can be, two, disclose whatever biases they have. And anybody putting something down makes a decision as to whether they want to write about something or not. That's an inherent bias. If you're at the Wall Street Journal, you're going to write an article different than if you're at the New York Times. And it doesn't mean the facts in the story are necessarily inconsistent. You get down to the facts are the facts. But the choice of what story to write, the Wall Street Journal, definitely more business focused, is going to write more business stories. And so so it's one, being a skeptical consumer, but two, kind of raising expectations that the people we listen to, read, um, they need to be better. And if they're dishonest, if you find that they are just selling you a bill of goods for who knows what their motivation is, we need to stop watching those people. We just need to be, and frankly, we need to be basically calling them out for bad behavior, because these are our surrogates. We don't have the ability to be everywhere. So we've always relied on surrogates. And in the past, it seemed the surrogates were a little more truthful. Although in the American Revolution, I mean, and after, there are plenty of newspapers used to call it yellow journalism because of the color of the newspaper. And they were the arm of a political party or a church, or you name it. So you knew what you were getting if you read that yellow newspaper that was written by the Baptist Church of America or something. You're going to get that spin. It's a little
Yeah,
harder
that
today.
makes sense. That really does make sense. And again, I'm going to go back to critical thinking. Engage your brain. Ask questions. Is this true? Is this really true? And then go do a deep dive. You can go to X. You can go to Substack. You can go to the newspapers that you just mentioned and start comparing. And that engages your brain. And then all of a sudden you're thinking, I don't think this is correct. Oh, hey, I like this. Which leads me to my next question, Larry, is what role do shared values play in overcoming today's political divisions based on your experiences against law, media, and nonprofits? I'll be honest with you, I don't watch the media. I cut them out of my living room a long time ago. They're not allowed.
Good for you. I read 4 newspapers a day just because I like newspapers and I like reading newspapers. Of course, I read them only on my iPad. I don't get anything in hard copy anymore. And I just think people that those pieces of the ability to, again, back to, I hate to repeat over and over about the critical thinking, but they're so important. And yet we're all somewhat time constrained. I mean, one of the benefit of not sleeping as long as you pick up a few extra hours that people would otherwise put in bed. Um, but I think I'll say this, Denise, and it's, kind of maybe a higher order of sorting, but some people just, they don't want to spend any time with, the artificial intelligence or sorting tools or other things. But the ability to now kind of provide your own newspaper on demand, if you will, to basically, say to ChatGPT, okay, I want you to bring me in, five different versions of this, and I want it from the National Science Foundation, I want it from the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and I want it from this newspaper. And now I'm going to pop into you a story I heard that said X, Y, and Z. And then pull up the information and is that true? And you know that's you've now been able to set this stuff up in a way that you can now just go right to and there are many other tools that aren't artificial intelligence and what we're talking about today that allow you to winnow this gusher of information that comes out to us every single day, and it's even gushing more every day, and winnow that down into those sources that you believe are pretty reliable and pretty fair and pretty balanced, or you balance each other by having something extreme balanced by the other side of the extreme. I do think we are as individuals, and this is really, it's really dangerous for business people who are trying to provide a product to a customer. We just have this so-called confirmatory bias. We believe X is true. So we want to listen to people who confirm that X is true, as opposed to listening to somebody else who says, no, X is not true. That skepticism is so important. And, how often we're at a dinner with family members and, your great uncle says something wild, your eyebrows go up and you go, I'm going to check that out. Well, now you can check it out on your lap with your rifle that you're hiding because you're getting bored. It's just so easy with the tools that are available and so important. So important.
It is. And I'm thinking Thanksgiving dinner. Remember, the rule used to be we're not going to talk about religion or politics. I think that went out the window some time ago. Although in my house, we're not talking about religion or politics. And you're not turning on the TV. No, just not going to happen. But it's interesting how, and you just said something important. You're talking about AI, and I use Perplexity for research, and I do exactly what you just said. Give me this. I want to compare. I don't want to be told anything. Just give me some comparisons so I can figure out on my own. It works well for me. Chat, I'm not loving chat these days. I think they're on a little bit of a downhill spiral, but I love Perplexity for research. So that's my tip for the day. And it's free.
I think Perplexity is great, and I still use chat quite a bit. I mean, you might want to use a couple. If you get this from Perplexity that says something that seems, that's quite interesting. I'm not sure I would have understood that. Well, that's the same question to another AI tool.
Yeah, I
And
go
it
back
doesn't
and forth
have to
between the
just,
two. I'll say, is this true? Is this
there-
really true? But
there's
for writing, I don't want to use chat. I just don't for a lot of reasons. But for research, Perplexity, and I'm told, and I haven't tested this yet, but Grok apparently is getting really good at that. So I'm going to start testing that.
Yep. And there's, some of these are going to fail. And, I guess the worry we have is that we put all this information in there, and one, is it going to be disclosed? There's some privacy issues, but more as importantly, we've done a lot of work and we've asked these questions, and and then those AI tools have a tendency to have that in their base of information, their underlying knowledge base, and if it goes away, it's like, oh shoot, I asked that question so well about I can't search for it anymore. So I think all of us are trying to figure out how do we, how do we copy it over onto a hard drive that's in our office in case OpenAI and Chat disappear. But I guess we could as AI gets smarter and smarter, we can replicate that. But I don't know how you feel, but I feel like, oh, I asked that question just right about a week ago, but I can't remember how I asked it, and it's like, yeah, well, maybe that question wasn't that great. So, but yeah, those tools are there, and I think they're you know, it's interesting the challenges. Get back to America and regulation, which is kind of government system, things we agree with. We're regulated on how we drive on the road. We're regulated how loud we are vis-a-vis our neighbors. There's just this kind of underlying important, government that we collectively agree makes sense. So we can actually live. We can live healthy and happily and safely. There's That's so great about America with AI. That we basically have a lightly regulated system. We'll see whether that light regulation is the right choice. I think it is, but there are plenty of people out there talking, the gloom and doom of AI, and not too long they're basically going to say, "Well, see you humans, we're happy running the place all by ourselves." And so, we've got some we got an interesting 10 to 20 years ahead as all these technologies mature and we see whether their societies become better or worse. I mean, I'm optimistic. I think it will become better because I think we'll figure out how to get better and better.
I agree with you. I refuse to just get caught in the, oh my God, we're going to hell. No, we're not. We're all individuals. We can decide where we're going to go, what we're going to believe, what is important to us. And I think that tends to get lost. We're individuals.
Absolutely. And I think that's the important question. We are individuals. We're empowered individuals. If we don't use of the power we have, we're not very empowered. We can be disempowered. But, when people hear something or see something that's just they don't like, well, what are you doing about it? Are you expecting others to do something about it? And I would say a large percentage of people do. Right? Well, that's just terrible. They shouldn't do that. They shouldn't. They shouldn't bomb in the Pacific. What are you doing about it? Or you shouldn't. You shouldn't. We should. Shouldn't have open borders. Okay. Well, what? But we are. What are we? What are we doing about it? And what are we as individuals? Ultimately, when you get back to what the founders did in empowering individuals, the power in America is based in the people of America. That is the foundational issue. And you read the Constitution of the United States, and I've read it way too many times, and most people never read it, and that's A-OK. But basically, the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, identify where's the power lie. First, it's with the people of the United States. Second, it's with the states, not the federal government. And third, it's the federal government. By design, our federal government is a limited powered government. No one listening today, Denise, would believe that because we've kind of allowed the federal government to become this big nanny of America. And, there's certain, obviously in the area of national defense, immigration enforcement, you're going to run out of topics pretty quickly, but there's several that are clearly a national government should do: a national tariff policy, a national tax policy. There's certain things the federal government is designed to do. Everything else is an option, and we, the people, and the states too, need to say, federal government, not your job, not your job to be doing that. It's okay if you want to regulate airlines because that's a national issue and an international issue. When the federal government is going to be regulating relations with foreign countries, that's not a state issue, it's a federal issue. But regulating what's happening on the streets by the federal government, that's not the role of the federal government. It's the role of the states, and in most cases, the role of the local community. And we lose sight of that because we want the federal government to do the things we want the federal government to do. And when they're doing the things somebody else wants them to do, we're not happy about that. Well, we all should be unhappy when the federal government is invading our lives more and more deeply because that isn't the design of our founders. So we should push back as Americans. And we should.
We need term limits.
We a lot of people criticize term limits because, well, the lobbyists will be more powerful. But the reality is when you've got people who are my age and older, going to Washington every day, we need younger people. People, your generation and younger. I mentioned, and we can go into this now, Denise, or we can hold that. But my co-author has now established a new political party in the state, and I serve on his board. And the real
See, I didn't know that, so let's talk about that.
Sure. So, some of your listeners would be aware of a national party that was called the No Labels Party. It was founded by Christy Todd Whitman, who was the former Republican governor of New Jersey, former EPA secretary or director, and Joe Lieberman, who was a Democratic senator, and probably more of an independent senator.
Right. Didn't he tend to vote with Republicans, though?
Yeah, well, our Senator John McCain, when he was running for president, almost picked Joe Lieberman as his vice presidential because he and Lieberman were pretty independent. So he was pretty independent. So some people hear that and they think, "Oh, it's a Democratic issue." No, it actually was it was nonpartisan. And they had many other people involved. And then so they created this what was called No Labels Party, which was really in Congress today, we have the problem solvers, where Republicans and Democrats are trying to get together to solve societal's problems. And No Labels was in that category. Compromise is not a bad word. Compromise is the design of legislators, so they create a series of laws and regulations that we all collectively, or 70% of us, agree with. If it's only 51% of us that agree with a particular law, it's not likely that law is going to withstand a change in leadership. If we pursue on executive order certain things, it's not likely that if another party comes in, those executive orders are going to disappear. No Labels was trying to be a problem solver. In any event, so Paul, they were on the ballots. They are a recognized party. You have to be recognized by the Secretary of State in most states to get on the ballots. And as a party, they can have a primary. But they really were more interested in the national voice. They're more interested in running a candidate for president and vice president. Never did, but they were more interested in that. After the last election, Paul Johnson, my co-author, former mayor of Phoenix, he basically acquired the rights to run the No Labels Party in Arizona and kind of help coordinate the work in 4 other states. And it's now called the Arizona Independent Party. And I'll spend a little bit of time today, not too much, on the notion of independence, but in the state of Arizona, independents, meaning people who register and specifically decide not to join a party. There are 5 registered parties in the state of Arizona, including the No Labels Party, and hopefully soon to be the Arizona Independent Party. But independents are typically unaffiliated. So anybody who wants to join, if they are an independent by their registration in the state of Arizona, they aren't a member of the Arizona Independent Party. But Republicans and Democrats in our state are PO'd because they think it's going to remove their power. So little bit of data here. In the state of Arizona, if you want to run for governor, either as a Republican or Democrat, you need about 6,000 signatures of registered Republicans or registered Democrats. If you're an independent, not affiliated with a party, you have to get 45,000 signatures to get on the ballot. I mean, how fair is that?
It's not.
Unfair. So one of the nice things about the No Labels, soon to be hopefully the Arizona Independent Party, is you are an independent, but now you're a member of the Arizona Independent Party. You've chosen to be a party member. You actually need fewer signatures than you would as a Republican or a Democrat because your party is smaller than the Republicans or Democrats. Even though in the state of Arizona, independents make up the second largest party after Republicans, more than Democrats. So now this process is also, and we use the book as kind of foundational to the party. We're in America. Let's fix things. Let's get things right. Let's solve big problems. Last piece of information here, Denise, and I'll stop, is, a couple of months ago, the New York Times had a poll that 2/3 of Americans think we no longer in America can solve big problems. 2/3 think we're so divided, so partisan, and this is both Republicans and Democrats, think we can no longer solve big problems. That itself is a problem because we must continue to solve big problems. And yet this partisanship is kind of tearing the fabric of solution. And those solutions require compromise. They require bipartisan agreement on what we should do at the federal government level. And we've allowed this contention on the wings of both parties to take over the parties, to take over the media that support those views. And it's kind of tearing the fabric of our ability to solve big problems like landing a man on the moon and hopefully soon to be women on the moon. It's what we did and what
Right.
we must continue to do.
And Mars, I don't know if you heard anything about the CHAPEA thing. CHAPEA is part of NASA, and I interviewed a man named Matthew Montgomery in October, I believe it was, and he is the science officer. They go into this habitat in Texas for 378 days. They're literally on Mars. I mean, it's
Um,
it's amazing. I'll send you those. Yeah, I'll send that to you if you're interested. But
yeah, I'd love to hear the
yeah, fascinating because you're talking about the moon, and that was July 20th, 1969. But my next question, we are going to run out of time. You're going to have to come back, right? You'll come back. So,
I will. I will come back as long as I'm still vertical, Denise. I'm coming back.
sounds good. I'll call you after a bit and get that set up for when now it's May of next year, but still. So looking ahead, and I think this is an important question. How can everyday citizens like me, like you, contribute to keeping America's strengths intact for the next generation?
I think simply people should realize one, the power they have as an individual American, that they have the power. And that power has been given by the founders of America and many generations before. Two, exercise the power. Most importantly, vote. Pay attention, vote in the people that you want, and then hold those people as elected officials accountable to do what the consensus wants to get done. Once we elect them, we got to pay attention. That takes time. Nobody necessarily wants to spend the time, but it's pretty important for every American to pay attention and to hold everybody accountable.
Oh, absolutely. And I do watch these people. I've been watching politicians since I was really young. I lived in a fairly small town, but my parents were not necessarily involved, but they were passionate about understanding what was going on in our community. And lately, and I've been thinking this for a while actually, that it used to be that politicians, and I'm thinking of the mayor and, people who were local, we knew them and they sounded intelligent. They appeared to be very well educated. They were very convincing. And I think for the most part, they were intelligent and they were definitely convincing. That doesn't seem to be the case anymore. It seems like the nastier and the more vulgar you get, the more attention you get. That's
Yeah,
worrisome to me.
listen to me. And I think, years ago, it was public service. People
Right,
chose
right.
to be a elected official for a short period of time, in between working private sector, whatever. And now it's a destination. It's the best job they've ever had, and they don't want to give it up. And so that's a
No,
problem. We have
they
we have
call
to.
it a career. Anytime I see a politician calling his whatever it is that he does a career, I want to throw up on his feet.
Yep, just give us work as hard as you can for that, with that one or two or at most three terms, and then move on and let somebody else take over.
Right.
Well,
That's
I
exactly
appreciate
right.
your time off. I know we're into overtime here, so I don't want to belabor anything.
Did I lose you?
No, I'm here. You hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Did
no,
you hear
that's
anything
it.
I just said?
Oh, it just went quiet. I'm sorry about that. Well, you're in overtime, so you probably have to cut it in any event.
Yeah, I will, but that's okay. What I was saying is thank you for sharing your remarkable journey and your insights with us today. And your deep experience against law, media, and business combined with your passion for American values offers a hopeful and inspiring perspective on what makes our country strong. So, where can our audience connect with you and where can they find the book? I know it's on Amazon.
Yeah, it's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I think the independent indie book site, they have it there too. And I would look at my co-author site, The Optimistic American, optamerican.com. I can contact Paul there and he can get a hold of me because very close with him. But optamerican.com is the best way to reach him. Eventually, somebody wants to go on Substack, they'll be able to reach us there too.
And you're also on LinkedIn. I catch up with you over there quite a bit. Well, listen, everybody. Today's episode of Your Partner in Success Radio, my guest, Larry Aldrich, JD, shared his extraordinary career from DOJ antitrust trials. We didn't really get into that. We'll go into that next time. And Gannett leadership to heading Tucson Newspapers and pioneering healthcare ventures, and as co-author of What's Right with America and How Can We Keep It That Way. It's an important book. Trust me on this. He illuminated the enduring strengths of freedom, prosperity, and shared values that define our nation. And this essential book, and that's my opinion, but I believe it's an essential book, and it is a staple on my desk, urges constructive civic engagement to preserve America's promise for generations ahead. And tune in next time for more inspiring conversations on success, leadership, and what drives us forward. And you can find this book again on Amazon. Thank you for joining us. I am Denise Griffitts, and I will see you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Thank you, Larry. It has been a pleasure.
Me too. It's been a pleasure for me.
Get your voice heard. If you would like to launch your own far-reaching podcast, contact Denise Griffitts at yourofficeontheweb.com and go to the podcast tab.